having a little technical stuff we were going through. I'll be off camera this time. That's part of the technical stuff. But no worries. We're here to show you slides and information so you can know your rights. And we're here with Jeffrey Douglas. He's our board chair, and he can also tell you a little bit more about himself and his history with Free Speech Coalition.
Hi, I'm a criminal defense attorney, and so I'll be using some of those experiences to assist in some of the things we're talking about. And I'm the chair of the board of the Free Speech Coalition, and have been for over 30 years. And it's wonderful to talk to you about these very important issues. I'm very glad Lotus has brought it, and she has my greatest sympathy for not being able to appear visually today. It is a stressor, but we're still going to take good care of you.
We're gonna work it out. We have beautiful slides to entertain your eyes since I'm not appearing on camera this time around. And Jeffrey's here. Yes. So, we just wanted to kind of give a refresher, to everybody out there about our rights, specifically as sex workers, especially in this current era and time. So many things are changing and fast moving and a little uncertain or very uncertain and dangerous and scary depending on where you live, what you look like, especially because of the work we do already. There's heightened surveillance and risk. So yeah, we're here to talk about it and give you the real facts and not just um scare tactics. So this recording will be or this webinar will be recorded so we can reference it later and you can show friends that weren't able to make it here today. And if you have questions, you can. I do encourage you to type them into the little box at the bottom where it says Q and A rather than the chat, because sometimes they can get lost in the chat. If people start talking and stuff, then it might be lost to scroll. So try and use the Q&A box down there, and then we'll get to those towards the end. So yeah, with that being said, we'll go on to kind of just give you a little brief interview or background about myself. Excuse me. I'm just flustered because my camera is off. But I'm Lotus. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the Free Speech Coalition's industry advocate, and I'm the vice president of Decrim Sex Work California. Both of these groups, we work to give sex workers better rights, freedoms, and working conditions. And obviously, the major goal is to decriminalize sex work in California and nationwide. So, with sex worker activism, it's really unique because whether we are fighting for labor rights or health access or against police violence or trolls online, our voices are essential. When we protest, it always is going to carry unique risks just because of the stigma attached to our work. So let's get into it. Next slide, please. Yeah, we can already go into the next one. Our First Amendment rights is the first thing we kind of want to get into in public spaces. That's our freedom of speech. That's pretty much what our whole organization stands for, Free Speech Coalition. Jeffrey, why don't you kind of go over for people a little brief bit of their rights as far as filming law enforcement, especially if it comes to ICE or other such activities out in public and they happen to be there documenting it or even at protests.
Right. So I'm going to tell you about the rules and then tell you a little bit about how those rules are being ignored. But the First Amendment to the Constitution gives you, and every state has an equivalent portion in their state constitution, the right to assemble, the right to express yourself, free speech, and that covers whether it's in writing or protest signs, as well as using your mouth, and to petition the government for redress. So when there is a protest, you are protected by all three of those components of the First Amendment. And arising from that, you have the right to film law enforcement and government officials in public. So it's but law enforcement doesn't like that. And ICE believes that they are immune from all rules, apparently. And there's a lot of experiences of them becoming punitive when they're being filmed. Nevertheless, you do have that right, recognizing that in this environment, the right is carries some risk. Uh, Many states have, and municipalities like cities and counties have specific rules about how close you can get. But by and large, um, the the rule is you can film, just do not interfere. That is, if you see a law enforcement officer throwing someone to the ground or engaging in other sort of violence, um, you can film it with complete protection of the Constitution and the law. If you reach out to try to stop the police officer from punching someone in the face, you will be arrested and you are going to put yourself at grave risk. Even if, a year down the road, some judge says that your behavior was appropriate, that doesn't mean that your life is not going to be badly disrupted. And as we've seen in Minnesota, potentially you're risking your life. So don't interfere, but feel free to record and feel free to express yourself. Um, there is nothing wrong with, screaming, "Stop it, you motherfucking bastards." Uh, but you do not want to physically interfere.
Thank you so much for that clarity, Jeffrey. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so that's very, very important information. When it comes to certain things pertaining to sex work and the work that we do, especially if you're out in public, traveling, doing your work, and you carry a lot of condoms in California, it used to be able to be used as evidence against us as ways of getting us arrested or pressing charges against us, saying that we were intent to engage in sex work. The other organization I'm a part of, Decrim Sex Work California, we did have an advocacy win with SB 233, which prevented police from confiscating or using condoms as evidence of sex work. Because obviously, if we are discouraged from using and carrying condoms, that would just lead to more risk of disease and health consequences. So we're glad that we did get that win, but unfortunately with the way things are changing lately, that was in, excuse me, 2023, with the way things are changing politically, our own progressive, supposedly Democratic Party in California is actually voting to recriminalize loitering with intent to purchase sex through AB 379, and mostly because they are trying to protect businesses, which um is the main reason, and not people. So anyway, next slide, please.
But even with the recriminalization, that is focused on the purchasers, not the people
Seller.
loitering for the purpose. So it's two steps forward, one step back, but people can no longer be arrested for walking on a sidewalk looking sexy, which is what it used to be.
Yeah, definitely. I hate to be ridiculously personal, but that actually happened to me in Hollywood. And I wasn't even walking around sexy. I was just looking for the bathroom on Sunset Boulevard, and there's no open businesses that had bathrooms. And two bike cops stopped me and held me for however many minutes. I don't know, because I kind of like blacked out or spaced out because I was just so shocked of what was happening. And interrogating me about where I was going. And then later I thought about it. I was like, oh, I was just profiled, because I needed to go to the bathroom and they made it seem like I was doing something suspicious or out of character. Maybe if there were public bathrooms available, we wouldn't look suspicious. So anyway, the ultimate goal is full decriminalization of sex work. Like I said, starting in California, usually because the country takes the lead from laws that start in California and go from there. The issue of profiling and loitering, as I just explained from my own personal experience, it usually hits trans women and women of color, people of color first. Being that I'm a Black woman, that's probably why they singled me out and for street, loitering and prostitution, even though I was just looking for the bathroom. Research organizations like ACLU show that actual full decriminalization is the best way to reduce police violence and increase public safety and improve the health of the entire sex work community because people won't be disincentivized to carry condoms and do risky behaviors. So, yeah. Anything else you want to add to that, Jeffrey?
Yes, real quick, the for those of you in this Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, the one of the sponsors and the guy who finally carried the bill over the finish line was Scott Wiener. He is now running for Nancy Pelosi's open seat in Congress. Um, I encourage you to explore his candidacy because he seems to be very sensitive to the kinds of issues that define the lives of sex workers. So you should
Definitely
definitely
so.
check it
He pushes for us. He was actually very instrumental with getting the SB 233 passed with us with Decrim Sex Work California. So he is one of the few that does listen to us and probably knows of our two different organizations by name. So yes, definitely look into him, support him, tell your friends. We need
out. I
every
don't think we can endorse. I'm not sure. So, like I said,
this is me, Lotus, speaking as an individual,
so
not
anyway,
for
at least explore his candidacy and see, assuming that you're in that district, check that one out.
See, aren't you
Um,
glad we have a lawyer on call at all times because I could just get myself in tons of trouble right here. So moving on to public safety and strategy. So if you are attending public protests, there's so many more coming up, like No Kings that keep ongoing and probably different local ones in whatever states and cities you're in. So before and after, make sure that you do have preparation like a buddy system. Don't just go out to a protest alone passionate, like, F it, I'm just gonna go. Like, even if it's that, leave a note with a neighbor, a text to a friend, share your location if you're gonna take your phone, or have check-in protocols for after the protest, especially because if people get caught up, you need to know that they didn't meet up with you or that they're not checking in, so that way you can follow up. Um, this is one that is has different kind of I don't know, opinions. Some people say don't carry your ID because that can get you caught up, and some people say do carry your ID because it'll get you caught up longer. Jeffrey, what would you say?
that's a close call. If you do not bring your ID, um, it will delay and drag out your custody time. The primary benefit of doing it is that the more complicated you make your process, um, that the more complicated that you make processing you through the system means you're increasing the burden on law enforcement. There are costs to doing that, but if let's say they arrested 50 people and none of them had their ID, that would pretty much break the system. um, but but if you're just one of four or five that don't have ID, it means that you're going to be treated worse and you're going to be in custody potentially significantly longer. So it's
Mm.
just your trade-off. Certainly, if there is anything about your appearance that could suggest to a hostile audience that you are not a U.S. citizen, that is, you speak with an accent, your skin is darker than mine, or any other indicia, having a um, a driver's license will reduce the likelihood that they will deem you to be someone that they should report to ICE. In most cities and counties in California, they are not cooperating with that. They're not affirmatively trying to use ICE as their partner. Um, but but that's something to keep in mind that may keep you from being suspected of not being in the country lawfully. I got a couple of other notes about group protests resulting in arrest. Is
Oh,
this a good
yes,
time for me
please
to
lay
go
it
over
on.
those?
Yes, please do, especially if you're going in groups, which I imagine most of us are. So, yeah.
Um, if you have medical issues, like I'm an insulin dependent diabetic, um, if you're arrested, assume that you will get no medication for 12 to 48 hours. Carrying medication on you, they will take it away from you. So you have to keep that in mind. Um, if you have a minor at home, if you have a child or children, make sure that there is a responsible adult there to protect them for, again, 12 to 48 hours. Under no circumstances say to law enforcement, please let me go. I have a 6-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 17-year-old at home, because they'll call in the Department of Family and Children Services, and you might find yourself in a mess that you do not want to be. So again, two components of that: have childcare ready for 48 hours, and do not mention that to law enforcement. Um, Ideally, in a group protest, they're going to be people that are not engaged in protest that have cameras that are doing the recording. Although it's lawful for you to record while you're protesting, first thing law enforcement is going to do is take your phone away, um, A, to stop you from videotaping, and also to see what you have on your phone. And there's a very unusually high percentage of coincidental breaking of phones. So that's another component of it. You have to expect racism and other bigotry in the course of arrest. When there are group arrests, law enforcement stresses out, and when they stress out, they return to that culture. And it doesn't matter the ethnicity or the gender of the cop, um, law enforcement ethos comes out. And so, like I said, you have to anticipate um, both, well, all forms of bigotry. And it's open and it's crude. Um, you have to expect punitive tactics when they're arresting a lot of people. When they put on handcuffs or the um, um,
Zip
plastic
tie.
ties, they will put them on way too tight and your hands will swell. And when you tell that to them, they'll probably smile at you. Expect not to be able to get access to a bathroom. Expect to, be put out in the heat or the cold on in a parking lot for hours and hours at a time. That's just part of the deal. In part, it's just because they're overwhelmed. They do not have the resources. They don't have, it takes time to book people. And so they just leave them out in the cold because fundamentally they're hostile to you. Um, and then the last thing in this regard is that if it's a true mass arrest, like 50 or more people, has happened a number of times in the last few years, particularly in downtown Los Angeles. People will block the 101 freeway, that sort of thing. They'll arrest just a ton of people. They'll arrest people who just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and we're actually protesting. But prosecutions of those people are incredibly rare because the system can't handle all of those new people. So sometimes they just send you a letter saying your arrest has been converted to a detention, go away. Or sometimes they'll refer it to what's called a city attorney hearing or a district attorney hearing. It's a mediator that sits down and says, these are the mistakes that you made based on a police report. learn from the experience, don't do it again. And as long as you don't like, urinate on their desk or something, or tell them that they're part of the fascist machinery destroying the peace in the world, as long as you're, mildly polite, there will be no prosecution if there's a city attorney hearing.
Okay, so at that point you don't yell in their face, you're
Right,
not suspicious shit.
right, right, right.
Love it. Okay, thank you so much for the very clear breakdowns, especially for those of us parents out there, of children of all ages and what to do specifically in those situations. So that's helping you get prepared before a protest. And so let's go on to what we're gonna do during protest situation. You're in the action. You definitely want to keep moving. Posting up, as in standing in one spot for too long, loitering can lead to questioning. So definitely don't do that. Keep silent if you are questioned. If they start asking you where you're from, what your name is, what you do, just say you're exercising your right to remain silent, or I request a lawyer. Don't explain your presence, your activities, or answer questions. Jeffrey, do you want to pop
All
in?
great advice. That's just those. You have the right to remain silent and the right not to be silent. That is, you are exercising your right not to be silent by protesting. But as
Mhm.
soon as law enforcement gets involved, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, once they're
Um,
in your face, I mean, trust, I know how hard it is to want to defend yourself and, stand your ground and say what you need to say. But honestly, in these situations, it's definitely better to be more powerful with silence.
and it's very important, and we'll probably come back to this later when we're talking about individual arrests, but assu- you can't talk yourself out of being arrested. If
There you
they
go.
decide they're going to arrest you, whether there's any reason to or not,
Mhm.
you can't talk yourself out. So anything you do, any words that you say will be distorted and used against you, right?
Yeah. Like
So
they literally mean that phrase. So like take it in, soak it in, because it means what it's saying.
yes, indeed.
Thank you so much. So yeah, if they ask to consent, or excuse me, if they ask to search your bag, say I do
No,
not consent to a search. If they ask to search your phone, do not consent to a search. And then again, like Jeffrey was saying earlier, know your immigration status, whether you're a migrant, documented, undocumented, US citizen or not. At this point, it's not really about that. It's more about the way you present and probably where you end up being in the moment of any kind of activity.
for instance, my wife was born Korean, became a U.S. citizen a very, very long time ago, but she looks Korean because she is, or of Korean descent. And she's a criminal defense lawyer, an alternate public defender, and a colleague of hers, also of Korean descent, was stopped by ICE, taken into custody, um, and they said, "Well, where's your passport?"
Mm,
And she said, "I don't bring my passport everywhere I go." To which they said, "Shut the fuck up." So she ended up being detained, and so now my wife and many, many other lawyers in her office now have a passport card,
mhm.
which is not, you can travel with it and all that, doesn't have a place for visas or
That's like a
anything, but
license
yeah, but
card.
essentially it's a U.S. citizen card.
Mhm.
So under this administration, most of the rules have gone out. So keep that in mind.
Exactly. We're not doing common sense anymore. Everything's a little uncommon, so just be more careful and more mindful. All right, next slide. So yeah, you have survived the protest. You got through it. you and your group, you're home, you're resting and recovering. It's stressful, it's exhausting. I have knowledge of that myself. I don't do very many protests because of this. Like it does get exhausting emotionally, physically and everything. So definitely don't just, end a protest and go right to shooting on set or go right to like seeing a client and dealing with all of that energy because it's going to be like a whiplash. Definitely use the rest of the day to prioritize self-care, bask in the feeling of accomplishment regardless of the outcome or attendance because that's something I feel a lot of us can get too latched onto, like, oh, we put out all these flyers, we did all this promo and quote unquote nobody showed up or hardly anybody showed up, and I don't think that we should get focused on that because even one person at a protest is giving awareness to people that are passing by. So don't get too caught up on that. We are successful just showing up. So also, if when you were out during the protest and you did notice harassment, profiling, things of that nature, and you took down the information, make sure you let the sex worker community know, hey, I saw this and that going on over in this neighborhood. Be careful. Might still be out there. And I think we're pretty good about sharing things like that when we come across it on social media. But obviously social media is compromised at this time. So definitely depend more on your, encrypted network communication channels. I won't shout out any specific brand names because you know what? Everyone's compromised. Just use what you know is safe amongst your friends and your groups.
When you document, if you were with a group of three people, each one of you document it separately. Don't sit down and talk about it and then write it down either collectively or individually. The value of your story is reduced if you have a conversation about it. Um, the other thing is that everyone experiences the same event a little differently, and if there's one dominant speaker, they may um, cause you to forget an important element that only you noticed. So when you're recreating what the events were in the case of an arrest of you or of others, um, write it down by yourself separately as soon as your pulse rate gets down to 100 or whatever. When you're able to do it, write it down as quickly as possible. Don't wait a day or two, if possible.
See, and that's exactly why we have a real lawyer here because that's such important information that I wouldn't even think about. But you're right. Normally, a thing to do in a group of friends is to debrief all together and be like, wow, can you believe that happened? Whoa, 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 this and that. And then I did this, and did you see that? And then, like you said, all of a sudden now everybody else's narrative is in your head when you're recreating the story. And it's very wise to get all of that down first on your own and then compare notes. So, shit. Thank you for pointing that out.
Sure.
Okay, next slide. So yeah, in the unfortunate case of an arrest of whether it's yourself or someone in your group, again, remain silent. Don't answer any questions. Simply state you want to speak to your attorney, and let's hear from an attorney.
Yeah. Again, just the most important part of the message, if you take away nothing else, it's shut the fuck up, right? Criminal defense attorneys even turn that into an acronym, whatever that is, STFU. um, so, um, again, you can't talk yourself out of an arrest. And going back to what we talked about before, if you have a child at home, do not disclose that to law enforcement because they will make that bad situation worse. Um, when you're in custody, it's the every step along the way is designed to diminish your humanity, to make you feel badly about yourself, to encourage you to say, why did I do this rather than that? That's just the nature of it, but it has nothing to do with your level of culpability or that you did anything wrong. There are unjust laws that you may be breaking, or it may be that you have broken no law, but you still end up feeling incredibly guilty and stupid and all this kind of stuff during the process because it's designed to do that. When you're in custody, you've heard you have the right to make a phone call. In every custody facility in California, there is a phone number you can call to speak to a judicial officer to ask for an immediate release on your promise to appear in court, called an OR, own recognizance release. So there'll be a plaque on the wall that's a sign that says, called, an 800 number or something like that for OR release. Get in line, call that number. The kinds of questions they're going to be asking you is, how long have you lived here? What are your community connections? What's your criminal history? It doesn't matter what the answers are to any of those questions. If this is the second night you've ever been in the state of California, or if you have, 15 priors, it's still worth calling and seeing if you can get an OR release. In this current climate, there is a bias towards OR release, very differently than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So the chances of you being released without posting bond within 24 hours of you being arrested is pretty good, especially if you have a lot of community connections, if you've lived here for a while, and if you have a minimal arrest record. And if you do have an arrest record, if you've made all of your court appearances, that actually is favorable. That is, let's say you were charged with solicitation or something, and you had to go to court 6 times, and you had no failures to appear, that's a mark in your favor for an OR release. Now,
Mm,
when you're released, um, which will be within 72 hours of an arrest, even if everything else goes wrong, um, you'll have a chance to talk to lawyers. If you are still in custody when you're brought to court, you'll be interviewed by a public defender. You will feel the pressure to take whatever you're offered, no matter how bad it is, because that's a key to getting out. But
mm,
um, in the current environment, for instance, for a prostitution arrest, there is a robust diversion program for sex workers, at least in LA County. I'm not sure if it's statewide or not. I think it is. So there are a number of diversion programs that exist for most misdemeanors. And then and the prosecution determines if you meet the criteria for it. In prostitution, there's not a statutory prostitution diversion program, but they use it liberally. And so if you successfully complete the program, you are not convicted of prostitution. The conviction, the whole thing is sealed. It's available to law enforcement in the future, but you can basically just attend traffic school or the equivalent,
mm,
and not end up with a conviction on your record. If you are talking to private attorneys, first of all, don't talk to the person that handled your divorce or who handled your car accident. Stay away from PI attorneys who also do criminal defense, family law attorneys who also do criminal defense. There are more than enough criminal defense attorneys to talk to someone who does nothing but that, and talk to two. I know that's making the unpleasant experience twice as bad if you have to talk to two rather than one, but you really need to hear different points of view. If you hear the same thing from both lawyers, it's more reliable, but it is shocking, disturbing, whatever, how often you will hear things that are very different from one another, and that's when your shit detectors have to go off. Um, so do not rely on the first person that you talk to, particularly if they're giving you bad news.
Definitely get that second.
Oh, and any criminal defense attorney will give you a free consultation. It's not the
Good.
case with immigration, often not the case in family law, but in criminal defense, that's universal.
Okay.
So if a lawyer says, yes, I'll be happy to talk to you, and that's going to be $500 or $1,500, hang up the phone and call the next.
Nice. Good to know. Okay. Free consultation always. Yeah, so in case of the property seizure and even if you are under arrest, still do say verbally state that you do not consent to a search of your device. They probably still will, but you've said it out loud. Refuse to provide passcodes. You have the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Ask for a receipt. So if they take it, you get a property receipt. So that way you have evidence that it's been taken, because it will definitely just be your word against theirs if you don't have anything like that. And again, remain silent. Don't just be giving out extra information. Jeffrey, anything else you want to add?
And just this is all just really great advice. California has the highest protection for memory devices
Oh,
in the country, relatively little in the last 10 years. So it is um, almost always the case, almost, because I'm a lawyer, I have to say
yes.
almost always the case that they cannot search your phone without going to a judge
Mm,
and asking for a search warrant. So not consenting is really important,
yeah.
because it makes it a lot more difficult for them than for getting a search warrant for almost anything else. And a lot of the times they just don't bother. So that's really important, and it's one of the benefits of living in California.
Okay, so don't forget your consent, kids out there. It's very important. If anything that you learn from this is that you do not consent to the searches and the seizures. It's important. So yes. Oh, and if you are released, make sure you secure you, if they like if you are released, you're not arrested. In the case that you are not arrested, but they still seize your property, that's what I'm trying to say. Um, Go home, don't delete your data, secure your accounts, don't do change your passwords and add two-factor authentication because they have your device so they can try and, you know, toy with it to get into it. But if they see that you've deleted data, obviously they can find that out through the phone services, but you can unlink your phone from the cloud so like future things won't sync up. But don't delete things. You can unlink things, but don't delete things because deleting looks suspicious and they will definitely probably use that against you. Okay, next slide. Yeah. So with that said, just keep in mind that our existence is resistance. I know this is all very discouraging, everything we keep seeing every single day, every new day, some new stuff to trip out about. But don't hide, don't cower. Our visibility in public at protests, um, you know, even if they're not sex worker focused protests, it's important. It's important that people know that we exist. I see the effects of it online and in real life. In real life interactions with people, sex workers are more respected than they ever have been before, even if we're being legislated against from this current administration. That's not the general attitude of the population. So keep going to fan facing expos if they're safe and reasonable to get to. Keep speaking out online if you feel your voice, if you feel something that you need to say. Don't hide. The conservative agenda wants us to hide and they want us to pretend we don't exist, but we do. We can even co-opt their trad wife, thing and make our own content on that level. So, with that said, is there anything else that we can impart on you, share with you if anyone has questions, or did we cover everything that you may want to know for public protesting as a sex worker? Let's see. Looks like everyone's just saying hi to each other in there. Here's the resources that we got the information from. Feel free to snap a screenshot, take a pic, research those sites on your own. They definitely have more information that we couldn't squeeze into this moment right here with you all. Keep on the defense, keep hope alive, keep your friends and yourselves informed. We are all we have, so just, keep in touch with Free Speech Coalition. We're at FSC Army on Twitter/X and on Instagram at Free Speech Coalition with updates all the time on how to keep safe and keep your business afloat in these ever-changing times. So, yeah. Jeffrey, any last words you'd like to say?
Shut the fuck up when,
Oh, I'm
when
done.
not you,
Yes,
upon arrest, shut the fuck
right. I'm so
up.
glad you said the STFU. That's so cute that lawyers use the same one we use in social media, the acronym.
And be safe and be proud.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Great job, Lotus.
Ugh, I did my best.
You did great. You did great. Um,